feel free to just participate in the chat with any of the questions or comments as we go through this. But yeah, we'll get started, everybody. So a little bit about the Alliance for Just Money. We are an active organization in the US, incorporated in Illinois in 2008. And we organize to educate around awareness for sovereign debt-free monies, which have been used in the past in certain times of history. And we advocate for this type of reform to occur for sustainability, economic justice, and economic stability, and so we can all have a prosperous economy. We work closely with the American Monetary Institute and the International Movement for Monetary Reform. So there's monetary reformers all around the globe who are aware of what we're about to learn, or maybe relearn if you're here. So thank you for joining tonight. I'm Fernanda. I'm hosting this presentation. And a little bit about me, I'm a biologist, and I started learning about exchange and biological cycles way before I got into all this economic stuff. My favorite currency is ATP, the currency of the cell, the energy. And then I got into this economic field through the pathway of caring about climate change and sustainability and the need for funding to realize all the solutions. Here's when we were at Citizens Climate Lobby, actually advocating for a carbon price, and then for the fossil-free movement. And I also have been active advocating for a Green New Deal. You see here in my yoga picture, I have a banner for the Green New Deal. So I've been in this for a while, and I'm happy to bring today to you the story of the money problem and the just solution that we have. So a lot of us think we know what money is, how it works, and yeah, it's just a given. But there are actually some types of money. There's what we use as a given is coins and bills, the money that's in our wallet. And that actually only makes up 5% of the money supply. And the fact is that 95 to 97% of our money exists only as zeros and ones on a computer, created and extinguished at the stroke of a keyboard. And this monetary supply is managed and created entirely by the bankers. So this is created by private banks, not by the government. That might be surprising to some folks. But don't take my word for it. There is plenty of evidence out there. Here's evidence piece number 1 from the Bank of England themselves. They said back in 2014, the majority of money in the modern economy is created by commercial banks making loans. I have exhibit 2 from Kumhoff, who's tested the theories of fractional reserve banking versus debt money creation and found the same thing once again. And if we need more evidence, there's exhibit 3, which we can show you the block of assets and how they put the loan as an asset and a liability into the ledger. This is the bank money system that we use. And this is kind of problematic because as money is created entirely as debt, it means that the principal amount of the loan is created, however temporarily, and nothing is created for the significant interest that must be paid over the life of the loan. Hope nobody's eyes are starting to glaze over. But this creates some systemic flaws in our system. So there is an unstable money supply. As you see in this graph, the money supply grows each year. They're creating new money throughout the process of history. And it also has the result of diminishing purchasing power. But the greatest problem, these lines are actually recession periods, highlights just exactly how unstable this monetary supply is. give you a minute to peek at that. The very biggest problem, however, is that for every dollar that exists, there is somewhere someone who is holding the debt. For every dollar that exists, someone somewhere is holding the debt. So in this graph, we can see that this 10% of the population has about 77% of the wealth. Crazy distribution of wealth and power, and this is exactly why we have the persistence of poverty. It's baked into the system. So it's really simple. Don't overthink it. The process by which banks create money is so simple that the mind is repelled. We throw this quote around a lot in this monetary reform field because it's true. It's so simple. It's created as a loan and then extinguished. So again, how? Banks give out the loan. They create a debt to put both into their liabilities and their assets and expect to be paid back not only the principal, the original amount that they lent out, but also the interest. So you see the entire system is relying on interest to be paid back, but it's literally mathematically impossible to ever pay it back. So this creates the pressure of growth and profit for every single person, entity, corporation who seeks loans and who utilizes the monetary system, basically. Everybody drives towards growth. As a company ventures into their business, they always have this pressure to grow and grow and grow. And if the economy grows at 2% per year, that means it would double in 35 years. This, on a finite planet, is a total recipe for disaster. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So money creation as debt leads businesses to focus solely on profit. Scarcity and the mission of profit, scarcity of the money supply, also lead to other insidious psychological effects. Like it's the relationship of being lent something that you have to pay back rather than it would work in a gift economy. And the company shall have to grow and expand to strive to meet the demands of the economic system. They'll be motivated to extract as much wealth and profit that they can from their workers and also from the environment. They will even turn from extraction to exploitation. They might also be motivated to cut corners and, for example, instead of going through the process of treating the industrial waste in an expensive process, may just, cut corners to save themselves the expense. And that is another reason that we have our environmental crisis. So they're externalizing these costs to society. Oh, sorry, that picture's blurry. So they aren't taking into account our ecology. Their view of the economy is just small. To recap, the corporation's view of the economy is limited by the systemic flaws of the monetary system. So they perpetually view the need to grow as necessary. And these pressures together are intertwined to what we are seeing in the ecological sphere. Which leads us to the crisis at hand, one that I'm sure we all wish we'd solved yesterday, the climate crisis. So climate change has been massively expensive in the past 20 years. Extreme weather events, floods, hurricanes, heat waves have cost 2.8 trillion since, in the past 20 years. Hourly, that damage is estimated at $16 million. And not to count the exorbitant mortality rate at 250,000 deaths each year from these natural disasters and pollution. Oh. So we really have to question what is at the root of this problem, and it's possibly our fossil fuel addiction. But is that simply because Santa gave the naughty kids the coal instead of the solar panels? Well, no, the fossil fuel enterprise has done an amazing thing in society. It found a need for energy and monopolized it, made us dependent, and externalized as many costs as it can. And it also got its hook in our politics to deregulate the circumstances surrounding the industrial enterprise, and bamboozled us to ignore the red flags and possible alternative forms of energy. It's basically been a perfect parasite created by the monetary system. And it's an exploitative business model that really can't fail. It's so convenient that they've altered the board game for themselves to profit more and more. And it's condemnable that they have produced such misinformation around the systems that control our planet. Like you see here in 1912, we knew about coal causing issues with our planetary thermostat. So it's been a superb industry to extract and create wealth, but they've also been able to do this because of subsidies. It's been a monopoly, and it's used subsidies from the public as well. The oil and gas industry spent about $124 million lobbying the federal government just in 2022. They've been hooking their claws into politics and appropriations in a way that they've been able to secure not only the bank-created debt money to fund the cost of their initial operations, but also they've secured $7 trillion in citizen-funded tax dollars. And this was found by the IMF study in 2022. So many sources of money are going towards this enormous problem. This is a graph visual of just the scale of the problem. The use of fossil fuels as our main and kind of only source of energy has been massive. This is what it would look like compared to a city, for example. And to emphasize here, coal, which has no plants to close in the US, there are coal plants that still have no plants to close, by 2030 have caused over 4,000, well, around 4,000 premature deaths each year. Liquid natural gas, which is fracked gas, is the main energy source that is estimated to keep growing according to the industry's plans. And they've already devastated low-income communities that are at the front lines of environmental racism. How are they doing all this? Well, like we mentioned, it's the money. The fossil fuel financing has been at $5.5 trillion in the 7 years since the adoption of the Paris Agreement. That's from accumulating the 60 largest banks in the world. And in the US, it's been $669 billion just in 2022. JP Morgan Chase might sound familiar as one of the worst contributors to this problem, financed $39 billion in 2022 and made staggering profits as well. The answer to all of this has been quite rational. We need to disconnect the fossil fuel system from the money, disconnect the fossil fuel industry from the money. So we've been calling for divestment. Groups have been advocating through several methods to end the accounts within organizations or banks that are still lending to fossil fuels. And these divestment campaigns have asked citizens of every stature to call their banks, tell them what their feelings are, and call them to make sure that they take their money out. It's been a great campaign. It's allowed people to really connect the dots between fossil fuels and the pollution and the CO2 emissions and the money at the root of the problem. However, in doing a deep dive into the issue, AFJM's, our organization's design sprint found that many groups that advocate for divestment, their messaging says that we need divestment so that our deposits don't get used to buy fossil fuels. That's, however, a flaw in our monetary education, because it never was our deposits that are given out as loans. It's quite often, if not always, brand new money, and there is no limit to what a bank can create so long as they see a profitable business model that can pay back the principal and the interest. So divestment has been a great campaign in connecting the dots. However, in a study by the Political Economy Research Institute, they found that they have not been especially effective as a means of significantly reducing CO2 emissions, and it's not more likely to work over time. Why is this? This isn't a surprising answer to anyone who already knew about monetary reform, but it might be surprising. But it still shows that divestment can be a good stepping stone for us to really take on the challenge to shame fossil fuels and to question the deeper roots of our environmental degradation. The sad truth is that no matter how hard we work, we will never succeed in achieving a green transition by shifting existing money to green sectors, as long as banks, supported by the central bank, can create an unlimited flow of new money for profitable fossil fuel industries. There's a whole nother presentation by Peter Deitch, highly recommend it, that was shown with Positiva Pengar, our allies in Sweden. But message to take home today is that divestment has had a good run, but it's really time to elevate our tools to ask for the end of bank money creation as a whole and ask for democratized money to defund and divest and protect and invest. So we'll take a little pause here, and I'd like to see some participation in the chat. Oh, lots of participation in the chat already. Just how you're feeling about this, if it's new information, or if you're mind blown with this new information, or if you're already quite familiar with it. And yeah, despite all our accomplishments, we owe our existence to a 6-inch layer of topsoil and the fact that it rains. We made it through the tough monetary stuff, and I'll have another presentation to back up if we have any more questions about that. But we got to the happy part, which is the just money solution. And our just money solution, as I mentioned, we advocate for sovereign debt-free money. And our just money solution asks for and allows us to have the end of bank-created debt money. This will end fossil fuel funding at the source, assures investments will be considered on a people-first basis. It will help us eliminate the greed and growth imperative. However, it will not alleviate consumerism. For this, we will need awareness and alternative economies to fulfill our social needs. So that is one benefit of our just money solution. Another is that it provides a pathway to the just transition away from exploitative economy and opens the door to honest discussions about how we can fund the climate infrastructure that we need in the form of a Green New Deal, possibly. So what would such a proposal look like? Well, the current version is called the American Monetary Reform Act. It's still being drafted by our groups. Please get involved. And it's based on the NEED Act, acronym spelled out here, that was actually introduced into Congress in 2011, which itself is based off of the Chicago Plan of the 1930s. And just money establishes that money is created as an asset, as a tool for exchange that doesn't go poof after you use it. It's a long-lasting unit of value and exchange as money was intended. And the fact that it would establish a money supply through fiat means that the money supply would be more stable than it is now. And it is intended to be money for the people and by the people. And some scholars argue that the money supply should then fluctuate only in terms of how many people are using money, correlating with population size. I'm seeing a lot of great discussion in the chat. I'm hoping everyone will raise their hands when the time for Q&A. Oh yeah, so here's our 3-step proposal that still is being worked in, but the main thing is that banks need to stop creating the money supply via lending, and then the government or our democratic Congress shall create all new money debt-free as a permanent circulating asset of the nation. But just money isn't just for the just transition. It can help us with all of these things. It can help us get Medicare for all, housing, economic justice, and really importantly, a stable purchasing power. Monetary reform can get it done. There's a Captain Planet meme for y'all. So what exactly is the just transition then? It is a term that was first used by the labor unions and environmental justice groups, and it has been adopted as the central campaign of groups like the Climate Justice Alliance. And they argue that transition is inevitable, justice is not. And that is exactly why we need to work on these bottom-up solutions and make sure that everybody is educated about what money is at the root of all of this. So the ingredients of a just transition are fossil fuel phase out with transitioning to sustainable energy, the adoption of land stewardship practices. It shall also include legal protections for nature and considering ecological economics rather than just that narrow view of growth as your ultimate economy. So in short, the just transition is any host of strategies that helps transition whole communities to build thriving economies and provide dignified, productive, ecologically sustainable livelihoods, democratic governance, and ecological resilience. And we need that because if we only go with divestment, we're taking care of this part of the pie, but we're really ignoring this other chunk, which is agriculture, forestry, and other land uses. All of these sectors would be affected by divestment, but we can't just ignore this other one. And degrowth, focusing on not growth of our economic system helps us alleviate the stress that will come from using our land in inappropriate ways. This sector is greatly affected by the issue of the growth imperative. And to tell you why that sector is important, the number of farms from 1982 to 2012 fell by 80%, but the number of hogs increased tenfold. So there's a huge conglomeration and transformation going on in that sector that we can't ignore as a source of the climate crisis. And that is also getting money from the bank sector, of course. So to summarize, climate activists, we can't just focus on fossil fuel divestment. We really need to take care of this guy and address bank money creation and get to democratized money. Yeah, can't ignore that slide. But luckily, there are so many other ways that our economy can be functioning. On the level of exchange, just money is really a stepping stone for people to learn more about exchange and co-ops and alternative hierarchies. This is a listing of all of the different types of solidarity economy that we don't consider in our day-to-day. And when we understand that money has been limiting our forms of exchange, we might feel free to eventually break free from monetary systems altogether. Or we can realize that monetary systems are a tool that we can redesign to provide exactly what we need as a society. So we do need to incorporate all of these other like housework, worker cooperatives, parenting into our economy. This is the economy iceberg. We need to reincorporate these into what we view as economy, and that can be done with redesigning our tool of money in a just and equitable way. So this is also a great slide from the Climate Justice Alliance. They show exactly what we need to transition from consumerism to regeneration, cooperation. And I want us to list in the chat, what's our favorite part? What excites you about this just transition? I'm really excited this slide includes this little piece of soil and plants, because we do need to regenerate our ecology as well. So there's cooperation, deep democracy. Yeah.
I love that it has purpose on the regenerative economy circle. I think that a lot of our labor at this point, because it is so profit driven, is not always like cultivating a sense of purpose.
Well said. Yeah. So that's all part of the just transition right here. Deep democracy, yes, until money isn't used to influence our politics, we don't really have a real democracy, guys. Sad but true. Another cool thing about the just transition is that it goes beyond just the climate. We also consider human welfare, equality, and economic justice. And this is really the time that we need it, because the average family right now is paying $3,000 a year towards greedflation. This system has gotten way out of hand. So that's our presentation, because this is ultimately what we all want, is for us to get off of fossil fuels. This is an image from the COP28, the latest protests over there at COP in Dubai. And they had these great posters of what their vision is for us to get off of fossil fuels. A lot of conversation around how we solve climate is focused on these fossil fuels. And it says full, funded, fair, fast, feminist, that's an important key one, and also forever. And we at the Alliance for Just Money might argue that we need another banner that says fiat, and for people to understand where the fully funded is coming from. And that is the key messaging of Just Money, is that it is fiat, a debt-free asset of the nation. So if this holding up banners excites you, I really hope you'll join us in May in Chicago. That'll be us holding up all these banners about money for the people, by the people. It's going to be a huge demonstration of people power over money power. And we all need to come together and question the validity and usefulness of our current monetary system and propose to transform it into something that can actually help us meet our social needs. We're going to focus on so many sectors of why money transition is essential, not only for the just transition and for a just democracy where money is not speech and corporations are not people, but also so that we can have eliminating poverty, economic justice, and for this branch, for an economy of our own, which is the group that focuses on feminist economics and making sure that all of those unpaid labors that are happening get included into our vision of the economy. Another sector shall be our view of, well, branching out into religious sectors, and that just money can help us pay for the common good and for our common home. And a lot of religions talk about like usury is not good. So we're going to reach out to all those groups. We're calling all organizers, citizens and artists, workers, everybody, come join us, stand up for monetary justice and economic justice. And reminding you why our just money solution is important. It will end the bank-created debt money, eliminating fossil fuel funding at the source, provide a pathway for the just transition away from an exploitative economy, and assure that investments are considered not by just how much it can grow, but how much it benefits people. And it will allow us to really talk honestly about what we need to pay for the costs of climate change. So there we have it. And we'll go into gallery mode. I invite you all to look at all of the lovely faces who've joined us today to discuss. And if you'd like to participate, use your reaction button. You can raise your hand. I'm going to read through the chat while someone hops up. Thank you, everybody. The concept about money creation land with everybody. Let's just be real open and honest. It is really complicated stuff. We've been told differently our entire lives.
Hello,
Yes, hello.
I'm Nick Marconi from Vermont. Yeah, so I'm 100% on board with the transition to a just money, a sovereign money government. But resistance I anticipate is so incredibly powerful. That's my first comment. Second thing is, I'm not sure whether I think that's one part of the transition, the just money, going for that. But I think what's more fundamental is to understand how we really have a radical plutocracy. In other words, what I mean by a radical plutocracy is that we have disembedded individuals from the community being empowered by money in order to have the kind of freedom to do and consume and to have. So all the things you mentioned, time banking, Kant's time banking, volunteering, all kinds of, that's part of the problem, to reinbed people within community. And I think that's going to be more of a platform that's going to help us overcome the resistance to getting us to the just money.
Yeah.
I'll just stop right there. It's a great presentation, by the way. Fantastic.
Thanks for joining us, Nick. Yeah, I definitely do see them as stepping stones. I work on both issues together, And as I'm working for a time bank and a library of things in my local community, I instill them with the knowledge and like ask around, oh, who creates the money? And yeah, a lot of people don't know, but then they come to really question it through that. Yeah, we'll take comments as I see you're lined up for comments. Nick Ignatz, want to go? You're muted, Nick.
Yeah, I just figured it out here. I'm the other Nick, I guess. Everybody who's raising their hands are a Nick. I just wanted to mention to the new people that haven't been involved in the movement to reform our money system is I have a book out on Amazon, which is geared to newcomers, Money
Mhm.
Creation 101. And there are two other books to follow, History of Money 101, which will be out within a week maybe, and Spaceship Earth 101, which gets into putting all of this together within our economic and political system and addressing the social issues and the environmental issues. So that's the exciting one to get to. But we start with the first one, Money Creation, because it explains how these banks create our money. It explains how in the past, that we get in the book too a little bit for the entire history, money has been created publicly by the government to fund things. And usually that's been done in times of emergency because the other system couldn't really do it. And a lot of times when we do get a good thing that happens, such as, for example, Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid, it only overcame that resistance because the present system was unable to answer the question or the problem of people getting something to live on after they've retired or getting their medical care. Now, neither system is perfect, especially our present medical system. That's why publicly creating our money would allow us to do the Medicare for all that Bernie Sanders wants, the advanced Medicare for all. Personally, I don't need it. I'm a veteran, I'm a disabled veteran. I can get 100% of my health care, but how about everybody else in the damn country?
Yeah, it'd be real nice if the healthcare wasn't attached to the jobs.
Absolutely horrendous that we don't have a system of that. And that, I mean, I would rather do just 100% government funded, not just funded, but provided healthcare. That's what I got when I was in the service for 4 years. Socialized medicine. And it worked just fine for us in our families. I was single when I was in the service, but a lot of guys were married or whatever it is. And that's really what I would like to see. But that's how we get there, is with this just money, publicly created money. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. And yeah, shout out. I really am enjoying his book. Good writing. So if anybody wants to get that, I'm sure Nick can get us a discount code or something. We'll take other comments. Thank you. Go ahead, John Lodencamper. Hope I got that right.
Yeah, I'm certainly on board with getting away from bank-created money, but I don't know if that addresses all of the fossil fuel investment. I'm familiar with a lot of protest against Vanguard, and I think Vanguard and BlackRock, both hedge fund, BlackRock and others, massive investments in fossil fuels. So just the bank created money doesn't seem like it's going to do the whole trick.
So the bank created money isn't going to do the whole trick. Well, yes and no. It will get to. So one thing we have achieved with divestment is, like, we know we have to get off fossil fuels. One route that isn't divestment isn't going to work because people still think that it's their own deposits that are being lent out. So when we inform more people from the divestment movement that it's actually brand new created money, we all need to go, bark at the right tree, which is that bank created debt money.
Yeah,
And
but the fund money isn't newly created, it's existing money, isn't it?
Lucille, John, you want to jump in?
I will before John unmutes. I think it's a great question, John Lonkemper, so thank you for it. And my answer is not sufficient to address what I think you're raising, but I think it is partial, and that is that the existing money system props up all of the other financial instruments in the economy, the stock market, and everything that Vanguard and BlackRock are investing in. It is what props them up artificially, unjustly, unsustainably, and it will leave stocks and financial instruments in place. You know, we're not ending the stock market, but we are taking away the artificial and unjust, unfair, undemocratic propping up of that, and they will have to sink or swim on their own merits economically, ethically, socially, and it will change the ball game at that level, and our decision-making power, you know, socially responsible investment. I mean, I had working assets, you know, it was my first credit card back in the 1980s. Well, it doesn't exist anymore. It was bought out by Bank of America, I think. But you know, we did have some power in how we decided to use the profits of that credit card system. And if we stop the propping up of the financial system, it won't eliminate Vanguard and what it does, but it will make it have to be more responsible for it. And maybe John can add better than me, but.
Well, I will add something, but I see Helen, she's kind of in line there too. But let me add a quick question, quick addition to what Lucille has said. You know, there's a debate that goes on out there about whether the kind of shadow bank area really creates money or not. And I think that what my understanding is that largely all corporations have this enormous line of credit access to banks. So typically, basically, the model that hedge funds operate on is that they get some investments and they buy treasury bonds. They use treasury bonds then as collateral to get loans from the banks. And there's a big, it's not a one-to-one thing between the collateral and the loans they get. They get much more loans than they have collateral. And it's this, essentially, it's the bank money that is essentially doing this lending that occurs with the shadow banks. And that would include Vanguard and the others. So in a sense, what these companies do is they create a demand for money because they can loan it out to these large companies. The demand for money then is always met by the banks who can create it. Mm-hmm. It's just like government. Government doesn't create money, but it does create a demand for money. And the banks are very happy to essentially meet that demand. But I think basically the banks, as Lucille has described, are fundamental to this whole process. And by essentially attacking the bank problem, I think essentially it will have a ripple effect on the other kinds of things, will bring the rest of the economy under a kind of control that's necessary to do the kind of things that Fernanda has been talking about. So thanks.
Hope that answered your questions and concerns, John. Feel free to hop back in line with your hand raised. We'll hear from Helen. Thanks for coming, Helen.
Yes, thank you. It's very good presentation. In our last monthly meeting, I mentioned about I was trying to find out the answer about the question of is money a parallel problem of our economic model, or money is part of that system. So I felt I've been doing some research about this. So I felt like our current money system is actually part of our whole economic system. So in other words, it's really hard to change the money system without really impacting the entire capitalist economic model we're running under. And therefore, if we just change the money itself, it's probably not going to be really impactful, or the large corporations are simply going to push it aside, say, we're not going to do this, and there's nothing we can do about that. And so to me, the reform needs to touch also other aspect of the economic model. In a sense, this should be a wholesale systematic upgrade or replacement rather than just money itself. And I don't know how other economists feel about this.
I'm gonna cheat and answer you with a visual that really landed with me, and this was from a larger. If I'd given you this presentation, that would have been 2 hours, but I really shortened it. So if we think of right now the economic system as this big ball, monetary system is a little tiny thing within it, it really doesn't help us think through our problems right now. So as we learn more about money as a tool of exchange, it really makes more sense to see that the monetary system is what is driving our economic system and how it flows and what money goes towards, how it's used. So I'm hoping that visual maybe has you thinking different ways around money. How do people react to this visual?
Are you saying if we fix our money system, then the economic system will be fixed, the problem?
Partly, possibly. And that is because of a lot of the things that we encounter in the economic system. If you boil them down to the relationships between people, right now in our monetary system, it's like there's a middleman that in every exchange you're doing, there's a third party that's gaining interest and profit off of whatever exchange you're doing as a two-party system. And as we exchange the tool of exchange to something that works better, a lot of the psychological effects of how we deal with giving and offering and receiving, those also change. So seeing money as a tool of exchange and a store of value, that is the lifeblood of our economy. And shifting the design of that, I argue, and through what I've learned in the 2 years I've been studying this, I might be wrong, I think it can really change our economic system as a whole and ultimately get us off of capitalism and towards something that's more generous and by the people, for the people, democratized money.
Okay, thank you. Can I have more
Yeah,
discussion on this later? Yeah.
yeah, feel free to hop back in. Jimmy, you got some comments?
Yeah, so, I have heard that the impetus for growth, the drive for growth is because of interest rates, and that in order to pay back the loans, you have to grow to pay back the loans. But I don't entirely buy that. That may give some push to it, but bankruptcy is not the end of the system, and you have companies that can't pay back and they go bankrupt, but that doesn't end the system. And neither do I think that if you did not have interest, that there would not be a drive for growth. I think that there are other partly it is system structure, and partly it is other forces. For example, governments wanting to have bigger militaries, and that they see that a way to have a bigger military is, to have a bigger economy that can pay for more, pay for a bigger military. And for individual businesses, the only reason to grow is not to be able to pay back your loan, but that essentially the system, you're rewarded for throughput, for increasing the volume of your business, and so that is an impetus to grow as well. And I don't think that you're advocating that there wouldn't be loans. So there has to be a system, a methodology for how the loans are allocated. On what basis are those loans made, and what is the machinery for that? Who is making those loans? Who is deciding, considering the different entities that are asking for loans, and who should get it, and who shouldn't. So, in terms of fossil fuels, that really seems to almost be a you could say, okay, publicly created money, okay, none of it's to go to fossil fuels, but you could do that with the current system too. So, and likewise, I don't think you can say that that if you don't have profit, or the necessity of paying back interest, that it's going to end at the extractive policies. I see more that the resources are not charged for, like polluting the air or extracting resources from the earth, that since it's, there's no charge for it, that it's exploited, and that the way to get that under control is to make sure that that there is a cost, that you are charged for it. So I think that I agree that that bank, simply loan created money, a debt-based money, is not a good system. But I don't think that ending that solves all our problems. I think you still, there's still a lot to deal with there.
Yeah, for sure. The title, Just Money for the Just Transition, implies that it's one ingredient in our just transition, and we do need all of those other moving parts, and the culture change that will come when we have rights for nature and have a way to re-internalize all of these costs that, as you say, have been externalized as corporations go about their business, growing their bottom lines. So yeah, I really do agree with what you're saying, Jimmy. I don't remember if there was a question in there, but I hope that you're reassured that we're advocating for all of these solutions as well as just money.
Well, yeah, I mean, I sometimes, there's a lot of, when we change the culture, then, we change the attitude, then all these other things flow. I don't buy that. I think that you have to look much more closely, much more specifically at what the effect of a change will be and how it happens, and that passing along psychological effects is not going to do it. That psychology changes when the reality changes to a great extent, not the other way around.
Yeah, we'll take that into consideration. And yeah, I'm sure that everybody in this room does a lot of the culture changing as well through volunteer work and participating in our communities. So yeah, we're on both sides of the coin. Young Kim, yay, glad you could come.
Okay, great presentation. Yeah, I think the argument we are doing right now is threatening many people, because this winter season, if we are saying divest from the fossil fuels, oh, how can I heat my homes, or money creation, or creation destruction mechanism of current banking system? Or what about my money in my bank account? People are threatened, feeling threatened. What are they saying? What are they doing? Current society, we have too much money, no more creation, no more money creation. How to handle our current money in right speed of circulation, in the right direction? I think that's the more important thinking. So we don't need to threaten anybody. Before we are saying divest from fossil fuel, we need to provide some alternative energy source. Without that, nobody can survive. So even though it is the nuclear power or the plasma power, that's more important. Just divest or to change the direction. You need to provide the alternative, concrete alternatives. So people should be, yes, not feeling threatened. So I sent my email message to Lucille and Stephen about my own writing. The topic is money. Title is Money Against Financial Product. Product means financial instrument plus financial derivatives. Money should be distinguished from these financial instruments.
Exactly.
We all agreed, come to new definition of money. My definition is money as a legal tender, official means of exchange or payment. That's it, no more.
Yep.
Even though it's a store of value or increase of value, I don't care. It's just the legal tender, official means of exchange, payment. And in that way, we can reorganize the whole banking system as a national bank and the commercial bank and payment services all together come under the chartered franchise system. As Professor Hackett emphasized, all come under the franchised, the chartered franchise. They should serve same. I don't like that concept of a two-tier system. Central bank and commercial bank, payment service providers are all linked, are all dealing with the same money, same US dollar. There is no central bank money and payment providers money, no difference. It should be one US dollar if it is the US economy. If it is Canada and Canadian dollar. So any kind of money, the sovereign money, US dollar and Canadian dollar, different sovereignty.
Mhm.
So each sovereignty has its own system. So in that system, I recently, last weekend, the Korean government and the Bank of Korea held an international conference. The title was Digital Money. Was the managing director of IMF attended and gave a speech. It was very interesting. Some of the speakers said that single list of money, the paper money or the deposit money, there should not be any exchange rate if it is the same US dollar denominated. Yeah. So free conversion or fungibility should be guaranteed.
Yeah.
In that area, no deposit insurance necessary. Deposit insurance is only necessary when the money is changed to other financial derivatives or instruments. Term deposit, even if it matures tomorrow, currently it is not money, just a financial instrument. That's what I'm saying. So please read carefully my writings. My writing is titled Money Against the Financial Product. It's on my personal blog. The blog is YOUME for
Yeah.
Yumi for one.
Thank you. Feel free to put your link to your own essays on the chat.
Okay.
I really enjoyed your commentary throughout all of the conferences we've been together at. What you mentioned today with financial tools and the sector of the dividing the banks as commercial and investment banks, that I didn't go into depth about how that also correlates to our environmental destruction, but definitely speculative investments and taking up lots and then developing housing on them and making profit off of that is definitely a consideration that
my proposal,
when we implement just money, when and not if, will alleviate some of that issue of the growth that those financial tools seek to grow for their investors, Yeah.
Well,
Thanks.
I was next in line and somebody pulled down my hand. And
Oops.
I'd just like to say that I appreciate what Lucille and John said about the bank-created money underpinning things, and I shouldn't have mentioned both mutual funds and hedge funds because hedge funds are highly leveraged, but mutual funds like Vanguard, those are deposits of IRAs from all of us. And so I didn't want to see you throw water on the divestment efforts from funds like Vanguard, which have met with a certain degree of success. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely don't want to throw any hate towards divestment. I put the picture up of myself being there involved in the divestment because, yeah, it's been an amazing movement. What I'm saying is that it won't get the job entirely done. One, because it doesn't solve the issue that they have an unlimited tap of money that they can create for any project that seems profitable. And that's going not only to fossil fuels, but also towards agricultural projects that destroy rainforests and then put hog farms and cows on it. So yeah, need to come at it through all fronts for sure. Mary, what you got for us?
Hi, everybody. I'm glad to see so many. And Fernanda, I have to say, a lot of nice things to say about your presentation, but boy, you have stimulated some big discussion going in a lot of different directions. And I love that. I mean, I think that's just a wonderful thing for us all. I'm going to try to be very short because I see there's all this interest. But Helen really caught my attention with her question. I loved it, especially that she said, well, if you're going to change the money system, you're going to have to change capitalism. And I'm thinking, yes, yes. And I wanted to say a word about how that goes. And some of it came in the chat. But the idea is that when you stop banks from creating their own capital for them own selves to use for their own purposes, then it opens the door for representative government to create money as needed for public purpose. And the other thing, when they can no longer create new money all the time for themselves, they have to use the fortunes they already have and money that's in circulation. Over time, those fortunes will redistribute, recirculate. They won't be able to just keep on building them up so fast at everyone's expense. So they create the money for extractive purposes instead of for the common good. So I wanted to say that, and then I don't know if this will make sense to anybody else, but I say I'd like feedback, in fact, too. It seems to me a simple way to say it is, we're not trying to take away anybody's fortune. We just want them to give back the goose. We don't want to take away anyone's golden eggs. We just want them to give back the goose that lays the golden eggs. That should have a public purpose. The goose that lays the golden eggs should have a public purpose. So that's what I mostly wanted to say. And then I wanted to also respond to Jimmy about, well, there has to be lending. Yes, the legislation that we propose provides for banks to lend money that already exists in their deposits, in long-term deposits, like CDs or committed money, the way most people think they do now. So that we encourage lending, but it's permanent government created money that's already in existence that would be lent for projects. Okay, that's enough. Thank you very much, everybody, for interesting contributions. Hand down.
Thank you, Mary. Go ahead, Paul.
Isn't John ahead of me? John Russell?
Oh, I don't know.
You're there first, Paul, in the row.
Oh, really? Okay. Hold on a second. Let me turn things on here. They're not going on. Okay. I didn't mean to be talking down to people. I have my iPhone in my lap, so sorry if you have to look up my nose. But I really liked the golden goose analogy, because I've been with AFJM since the very beginning, and I still have trouble wrapping my head around some of the ideas and concepts we propose and discuss and promote. And I think sometimes we say things that are not quite accurate and can maybe lead people astray or add more confusion. And so I try for me to simplify things as much as possible. For instance, I will note here that there will still be banks. There'll still be probably as many loans under monetary reform as there are now. There's still going to be as much interest that we're going to be paying to banks as there are now. We're not getting rid of that. The only difference is, and the key word or key phrase in my mind is first use. Who gets first use of created money? And what we're doing is we're shifting that from the banks. They get to create it and they get to use it for whatever, office buildings, shopping centers, investments in the casino. whatever it is, they can do that only after the government, we the people, get first use of the money that's created. If they want to waste their money, that's fine. But we're the ones who get first use. And this really ties back to the whole theme of this coffee house discussion, is the transition. This gives the government the power. Now, we could have a corrupt government that can abuse this new way of creating money. That's just the fact. And people often push back on what we're proposing, say, oh, it's dead on arrival, it'll never happen. They're right. Now, under our current government, under our more and more fascistic leaning government, it's not going to happen soon. But my goal is not to come up with a scheme to change the system, but to educate people. That's the main function of the Alliance for Just Money, is to educate people on what our current money system is now and what it can be, and what, to give people vision, something to aim towards. So when people say, well, we can't afford that, you can say, yes, we can. If the government is creating, the money and taking that creation power away from the banks, we get first use. Then it goes back into the pot, the regular economy. Banks will be charging interest, the loans will be made. It's that simple. And some of these concepts are very difficult. Like the concept of bank money creation is not easy. I struggle with it all the time. And but you don't really have to understand that. Just believe it, because it's true. And there are many very well-respected economists who can demonstrate that. But again, it's first use. We, the people, get first use of newly created money. If we abuse it, that's our problem. But at least we get first use. So that's my way of kind of wrapping my head around it. No.
Heck yeah. You inspired another chant that I know we're going to use at May Day. When they say we can't pay for it, what do we say? Yes, we can. So that's exactly what we're going to be saying out there.
Yeah.
Comments, John?
Yeah, I just want to thank you very much, Fernanda, for pulling this together the way you have, because when I started out many, many decades ago, before I heard anything about monetary reform, I was very much into issues of social justice. I was very much into issues of conservation and worried about the climate thing, that whole thing. But for me, there are so many ways of sort of expressing each one of those concerns. And when I heard about the monetary reform idea and the idea of how central money is in terms of the directions the economy goes, whatever is built and so on, you first need to raise the money for it. And that's why what Paul is talking about is so important. That is to say, the first use would be public purposes, and only secondarily then will it filter into the economy to be used in various ways. It'll be deposited in banks, as Paul points out, and there'll be lending taking place, just like, but it's that first use that makes things possible. That hasn't been possible. And for me, once I heard about the monetary reform, I said, yeah, that is the part of this whole thing that has not been attended to, that people don't know about. And so that's why I've chosen to focus in this area. But the concerns that have been expressed here by Jimmy Pryor, by Helen Shee, and so on, about other areas, the complexity of the economy, and all of that is true. But I think the monetary issue has been the forgotten issue, and it's been just so swept under the rug, essentially by an entire profession of economists, as is documented so well in Nick Ignatz's book. That it is this monetary reform that now needs to take its place among all of these others now pretty well funded efforts in terms of climate and in some cases social justice, but monetary reform needs to take its place among them because it is central. Thanks.
Go for it, John Russell.
Okay, you can hear me? Yes. Hello? Yes, so a couple of questions and a comment. I've heard and read claims promoting, with respect to banks, what's called state banks as a positive way to go. And also, with respect to the concept of land use. I have recently come across the term microbial fertilizers, which are alleged to be in particular relatively environmentally benign. So I'm wondering about both of them. And the comment is that something I heard, I'm 85 years old, something I heard decades ago, which I think made a huge impression on me, is the following. Which is the most dangerous animal in the forest? We are.
Sorry, I blanked out. Was there a question? I do agree that, yeah. It was a little hard to hear you. Helen, you had some more thoughts?
Yes, I really appreciate everyone's comment and very insightful with all of the experts and activists who have been in the field for a long time. I have a very practical question. Well, the transition to happen is going to take a while, right? It's a process, and it might be scary, to the established. And my question is there something we can do tomorrow with our existing system, but follow a different principle and different way of thinking about money, and helping people really on the practical level to have this transition start tomorrow? What we'll be doing?
What you can do tomorrow is educate more people about this. As far as making a difference tomorrow, volunteer, get involved in those under the iceberg economics that we don't talk about, and talk to people about how that can be incorporated more fully. Any other suggestions from the crew here?
Oh, I don't mean that what education volunteer of that. I'm saying that
Virtual aid, yeah.
How we use money, how we treat this money thing, how we use this green paper versus the number on our credit card or number in our bank. Is there something we can start this transition tomorrow by using this money differently?
I mean, I think all the other aspects that Fernanda talked about of gift economy and, local currencies, they all exist, but that doesn't that helps people survive, which matters.
Yeah.
Absolutely matters. And I bet everybody in the room is doing that kind of stuff. But to change what we use as money by those actions, that's not computing. And so maybe when you do those actions, you make the connections for people. And so that's why I unmuted myself to say, I'm going to my congressperson's office tomorrow to call for a ceasefire. And I'm going with a group of Mennonites, and I only have Mennonites in my background. And so my poster is going to say Mennonites and monetary reformer for a ceasefire. When I write to people about free Julian Assange, he should not be extradited to the United States, but that has nothing to do with monetary reform except through me and what I communicate. And people could make the connection to it of saying, free Julian Assange, free our money. It's our money. And it's not that, 2% of it is ours. It's insane. So I think yes, we need to, you know, participate in time banks if we can and all those things, but they help people survive, and they also help the existing system to survive yet another day. And central bankers know it's on their last, that it's faltering. And we have to be at that table with those central bankers and with, you know, with people with our answers. And so we have to be able to dialogue with them. We have to be able to understand what we're talking about. So there are a lot of things. And I hear your angst, and I'll be quiet now because we all do have to wake up and act tomorrow. And yet people have understood the flaws in the money system for centuries, and people have had answers. We had a better money system at certain points of time in our history, but they weren't universal in the polity, in the economy. Anyhow, I'm going to be quiet, but those were a few suggestions.
Yeah, Helen, if you want to look more into how a just money-like system has been implemented in the past, you can look at greenbacks, which was when Abraham Lincoln, to fund the Civil War, used the power of Congress to create that fiat money, just not as debt, but as a just money currency. We have a song, I don't know if Howard's here to sing us, but we have Bring the Greenback Back, because was a time in our history in the US where we did have a debt-free money. There's also the example in Germany in Wargel, where they had they weren't particularly coins, but they were stamps. Someone can explain this better than me. There's a whole movie, Shillings from Heaven, that explains how that the governor created a exchange unit for workers to work on things for the public good, like fixing the school's roof or something, and just paying the workers out of the goodness of this. Yeah, it's complicated. Movie about it. Go watch it at home with your family. John or Ronnie? Ronnie hasn't gone. Let's hear from Ronnie.
Go ahead, Ron.
Okay, thanks. I've enjoyed the discussions, and I want to say I'm in sympathy with the green goals and all of that, but I want to go back and just to get a firm footing in terms of what the Chicago economists were talking about, Henry Simons and those. And I guess I say this every time I get on here, but remember, banks serve two functions: a payments system function and a credit function. Okay, two things. There is no, going back to David Ricardo, there is no reason why those two functions have to be in the same institution. And what we're seeing today is the payment system is being separated from the credit system. If you look at PayPal and all of the Google Money, Apple Pay, all those things, the payment system is being separated. Today, we don't need the banks to operate the payment system. That can be totally separate types of firms. Now, if the banks get out of the payment system, what will they be doing? Well, if they no longer have those deposits they can lend out, it will have to be equity based. Okay, so this is what Henry Simon said was the financial good society, and it's one to save capitalism. Very clearly, in Simon's view. So you have, on the one hand, government created money. That's it. There is no other money. And as far as debt will be long-term debt, no short-term debt. If you allow short-term debt, it becomes money. So you have government money, and you have then equity-based mutual funds, stock ownership, share ownership, whatever you want to call it. That's what we have. Those two functions are totally separate. And that is, again, what Simons called the financial good society. Payments totally separated from credit. Does that make sense?
Yes, it was helpful, Rami. Thank you.
Yeah, I just like to add, thanks, Ronnie, and obviously that separation is one of the things that was sort of achieved with the Glass-Steagall, partly, and is now essentially written into, for instance, it was written into the Need Act, for that matter, and is now in the American Monetary Reform Act to separate those two functions. But what's interesting is your proposal, your sort of implication, perhaps, that this spontaneous evolution of private payment systems can, in fact, displace the banks out of that business.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and that would be a good development. It gets the banks out of the payment system, and it gets rid of the deposit insurance and everything else. So, one of the things I say is it's evolving in a way in which we can separate. If we can separate payments and lending, you can get down to the issue of, okay, who's going to create the money? And who is going to create the money in the Chicago plan is the government. The government is going to create the money. That's all that's money, and it will go out and spend it, and that's it. Anything else that's created is, they can, private firms, PayPal can help facilitate the payment system and all of that. PayPal's not going to create any money. None of those firms they're not creating money. They're facilitating payments, by the clearing of buying goods and services. So I think in that sense, it's moving in a direction which is favorable to this whole idea of who creates money. Get the banks out of creating money. That's key.
One of the things that I wonder about, Ronnie, and you know more about this than I do, but it seems to me that Macmillan in his book The End of Banking talks about this idea of payment systems that are sort of in a lending system that are peer to peer, but that nobody holds the money during this transaction. That it's between two individuals. But my understanding is the way that PayPal works is PayPal's got a bank account, so so it's still involved in the banking system. So if the payment system goes down in the banking system, PayPal's got a problem too.
Well, let me be clear that you're right. The banks still want in on it, on everything. But what I'm saying is, it's clear that there is no reason why the banks have to be in there except they want their cut. Okay, and the Federal Reserve wants to be in the payment system. Fed wants to keep the banks going. That's the whole system. I'm saying technologically, it's not necessary to have banks operate the payment system anymore. You could have this instantaneous. We could have instantaneous transfer of value, and that's all we need, to make the payment system work well. Get the banks out of the payment system. That check clearing and all that stuff. Let somebody else do it. The banks don't need to do it.
Well, I like what you're saying very much. I just want to be assured that there is a mechanism of getting the banks out of it. In terms of the way that the specifics operate.
Well, that is the problem, because that's the problem of the power of the Federal Reserve, and we know the banks. The Fed and the banks all work together. That's the Federal Reserve is a big problem. I mean, it's a big problem. They want to keep things the way they
That's
are.
why we'll be marching and demonstrating in Chicago in front of that Chicago Reserve.
Well,
I want to make sure that everybody knew who came to this call, who hasn't been associated with AFJM before, got something out of this, was able to find some answers to their questions. You can definitely subscribe. We have also a lot of social media to follow, including TikTok. So get on there, like and share with your friends all this knowledge. And it is the end of the time here, and I want to reiterate that we are trying to bring all of this terminology about democratized money, just money, to a household term. Like, people need to talk about this for Christmas. So please do that. And also, we're going to be demonstrating in Chicago, and we're wanting to bring musicians. So if you have some cash to spare, please donate so we can get these musicians.